We're going to start with the first chapter, and this is translated by Sawyer as Initial Estimations. The art of war starts out saying that warfare is absolutely critical for the state. It is the most important thing when you are thinking about the running of the state and the defence of the state. But Sun Tzu doesn't mess around here. He gets straight to the punch and he gets to one of the most famous things. And these were originally translated as the 5 constant factors, or the 5 things you should really keep in mind about warfare. And what I'll do now is I'll break it down for you. The Tao, or the Tao, whichever way you want to pronounce it. Now, most of the authors that we're using, they take this as legal laws and the way you run the country. And what Sun Tzu goes on to say is that this is how the subjects go with their ruler. If you run the country well, your subjects won't rise against those in command. They won't rise against the powers. So Tao, or the way in this way, is actually the way of laws, the way you run the country. Heaven. Now this one gets really a little bit, you can go deep into this, because some people, I think Giles translates it as just weather, or some people just, you know, the heavens. But this has loads of connotations in the Chinese and the Japanese. It states the heavens and yin and yo, or yin and yang. So in Japanese it's yin and yo. Now this of course does mean weather, that you've got, you know, not only you've got to have good rules governing the land, you've also got to understand the weather when you go into battle and things like that. But this is also inyo, or omyodo gets into it, and it's actually about divination, astrology. And if you go to Book of the Ninja, and if you go to page 268, you get this, which is opportunities bestowed by heaven. Now in Chinese and Japanese warfare, they would check the date, they would check the stars, they would check the chi, the generation of cycles, the opposite way, the destruction cycles, all these things. So let me give you a basic example of the type of things that he would be actually talking about. I'll just pick one at random. The auspicious hours for the days of Hinoe and Hinoto are, for first, on these days, the time of kanji, there's a kanji to look, is the hours of the tiger and the hare. For example, you also get the days of Kinoe and Kinoto are days whose element is wood. Now, I know that might not make much sense to you at the minute, but what would happen is, on a battlefield, a Chinese or Japanese battlefield, the people who deal with astrology, the samurai deal with astrology, would come up, you know, with the army, and they'd be like, oh, we can't be in this position, we've got to move there because, you know, the star's in this alignment, or we can't move on this day because it's in this cycle, and their lord is fire, and we're in an element of wood, therefore fire destroys wood, so we shouldn't be here. Let's wait till our element becomes fire and their element becomes wood, and then let's go in. There's all that. So Sun Tzu is not just saying the weather here, he's talking about a vast spectrum of things you need to work out. So I'm sorry about that, but if you're going to really study Sun Tzu, you've got to go straight into that sort of stuff. Earth. He actually talks here about the terrain. It's sometimes translated to terrain. And so while you've got the moral conduct of the people, remember, with the laws, or the way, sorry, you then have the heavens above you, which is the weather and the astrology and all what we've just talked about. And then it goes on to the earth. You're in terrain. Now what I've got my notes here, so I'll just read from them. It says, either if the terrain far or near, how far away it is, how near it is, how difficult or easy it is to cross. So think about, you know, are we going a far distance? Are we going a near distance? Are there mountains? This is where you need shinobi. Send out the shinobi, get the scouts going and check out all the terrain, the footing, the rivers, the mountains, all that type of stuff. Is it expansive or confined? Now this type of thing, you could take this a few ways, but this, for example, I know especially in the Bansen Shukai, it says when you get to a certain location, does it have a massive plain? Can you fit the army there? Or is it a small place? You have to divide your army up. Of course, in Sun Tzu, that just says massive, or is it confined? So you could take it however you want. It's me and Ben Morgan who are working on this series, and we spend some time on Skype discussing and going through these things. So the next bit was actually, we came across a bit of one of the points where a few of the translators actually disagree. And this one is, fatal or tenable ground. And tenable means defensive. Can you defend the ground? And of course, fatal is, will you die on that ground? So, and some of the authors, other authors say, you know, life or death. So basically, when you've moved out, you go across the terrain, you check out the terrain, you get there, can you fit your army in it? And then, is it defendable? So if you see, they do actually add on to each other. So you've gone out, you've looked around, your scouts have said, yep, you can fit your army on there, it's got water. You get there and you're like, is it really defendable? Can I keep the enemy out? Or are we going to die on this land? And of course, your scouts need to know this information, because if they come back with the wrong information, you could kill an entire army. The general or command. Now, this means your leader, your full-on, whoever's at the top. It might be a hierarchy here, but, or, you know, the top commanders or the top officers. But the point here is that the top officers need to be doing the correct thing. They need to be making sure they are running this system well. Now, again, we've got, Sun Tzu says, they've got to have wisdom, they've got to have credibility, they've got to have benevolence, they've got to have courage, but they've got to have strictness. And if you read any of the sort of, the Chinese classics, it constantly talks about a leader has to be fair. If a leader is not fair, his men will not follow him. So, for example, if someone does something good, you reward them. It's the carrot and stick. If they do something bad, you punish them. But you must not punish them to beyond what is necessary. Of course, there's the famous thing where Sun Tzu killed the women, so you could argue against that. But in general, Chinese classics say you should punish just before you get to too much. And you should make sure you have no favourites. So you should punish your friends equally as you would punish your enemies, or, you know, the people you dislike in the camp. That type of thing. So the leader has got to be strict. He's got to be firm, but he's got to be fair. And that's how, you know, you will keep leadership within a camp. This includes organisation and discipline within your army. How are you? The ninja manuals often say, when you go, how have they set up their encampment? If their encampment is not set up correctly, or it's not set up in a defensible position properly, you know they've got bad discipline inside. And this is what a shinobi should be looking for, the discipline inside the camp and how the camp is set up. You can tell so much from the arrangement of the camp itself. Regulations. Now, regulations in Chinese and Japanese warfare there's lots and lots of things. But for example, do people say passwords as they go in and out of the camp? Do they move in groups of 5? Or are they allowed to cross boundaries? Do they gather in massive groups and just drink and gamble? Are they rowdy? Are they silent? All these things shinobi are listening for, and they're waiting to tell. And this is what you've got to know about the camp. How well organised and how good their regulations are of moving in and out and moving around and setting up the camp. Now, way of command. Now, way of command was quite difficult because, again, it could be interpreted as how you command them. But most of the authors say this is probably military hierarchy. Do they have a correct, or do you have a correct military hierarchy within your forces? If not, you're in problem. If the enemy don't have it, you're fine. If the enemy do have it, it's another tick in the box for them. Also, logistics and supply route. What supplies have you got? What stuff have you got with you? How is it being dealt with? Are the stores intact? Are the stores being looked after? How good are the weapons? Are the weapons in, you know, good maintenance and things like that? All these things come from that. This include the type and nature of equipment, remember. So we've got to see what types do the enemy have. Do they have better equipment? Do you have better equipment? How good is their equipment? How well maintained is their equipment? Things like that. To recap, you've got the way. This is how the country, your forces are generally ruled. Do they like their ruler? You've got heaven, the stars, the directions, the weather. Then you've got earth, the terrain. Can you cross it? Is it, you know, difficult to cross? Can you defend the terrain? Does it have water? Then you move on to the command, the general. Is he respectful to his men? Do his men respect him? Does he have a good discipline code? And then at the end you have the laws, the whole. This is their disciplines. How good are they? How good are the people? How well organised are they? Okay, that's the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching. Now please subscribe. We are Natori Ryu and we teach samurai warfare, and this year we're concentrating on the Chinese classics.